There we go. I think we're on. All right. So it's been a while since I've had some audience participation in the kids portion today. And we've got lots of people in the room. So hopefully a great chance to get some of the teens and adults here to give me some answers. And of course, the kids at home should be thinking about what we're talking about today. So childhood fears. That is our theme for right now. So I want you to be thinking about things that you were afraid of as a child, or if that's too long ago for you to remember. You can also think about what your kids might have been afraid of, or your grandkids are afraid of, but childhood fears. Does anyone have any examples of some childhood fears that they could share with us?
The dark.
Yes. Lightning, that's a good one. Yes. Anything else that you were afraid of? Yes. Heights, afraid of heights. Yes. Spiders. I was definitely afraid of spiders when I was younger. The dark, yes. Bees. Ooh, lots of good ones. Anything else? Childhood fears. Yes. Getting lost. Yes.
Our old furnace room at our house.
Oh, there was a furnace room that apparently was scary.
You have 4 siblings locking you in there.
Oh, so it wasn't actually the furnace room. It was the fact that their siblings were locking them in the furnace room. Ooh, okay, I see why. Yes. Monsters under the bed. That's a key one that we think about all the time with childhood fears. Yes. Yeah, one more.
My neighbor's dog.
Oh, a neighbor's dog. Yeah, I delivered papers as a kid, and every time I got to houses with dogs that would bark, oh, yeah, you didn't like that. But yeah, I actually had quite issues with fear as I was a kid. And I think it was around when I was 11 or 12 that I was the most fearful. And the things that I was most afraid of at that time, I was afraid of the house catching on fire. I was afraid of someone breaking into the house. And I was afraid of giving in to peer pressure. I'd had all those, talks at school, don't give in to peer pressure. Anyway, those 3 things kept me up at night. Especially, they're the first 2. If I had noticed that if I heard that my parents had gone to bed, then I was like, well, what happens if something happens overnight? Like, if someone breaks in or the house catches on fire, I need to be the one to stay up to, protect the house. I don't know what I was thinking I was going to do. But I would literally, stay up all night because I was, so afraid that something would happen. So, yeah, fear was definitely a big part of my childhood. And along with being afraid of things happening to me, I was also very cautious in that I wouldn't want to try new things, especially things that I thought might hurt me. So I can think of some examples of when we were on family vations, and I would see my dad and my sister would go up and climbing on different rock formations and stuff like that, and I would just sit by and watch because I was afraid that I might get hurt. And what I was lacking in that moment was courage. And so courage doesn't mean that I wasn't afraid, right? So I could have gotten hurt, right? There is a healthy element of fear too. But courage is this idea of I am afraid, but I am going to face that fear and I'm willing to do it anyway. And especially because I saw that my sister and my dad were doing just fine. They weren't getting hurt. That could have helped my courage, right? And be well, if they're okay, then I can be okay too. And I can face this fear and I can be courageous. And there are many examples in the Bible of people who are courageous, and I'm going to focus today mostly on ones that were younger, because I think that might be more encouraging for our younger audience members at home. And so the first one I'm going to talk about is David and Goliath. So I'm assuming that most of the kids at home have heard this story, but David was a young man. He was probably a teenager at the time. And so what had happened is he had gone to go and visit his brothers. So his brothers were fighting in a battle, and he went to go and check in on them. And so what was happening is that there was this big giant who was a Philistine that was basically coming to mock the Israelite army. And he was like, who's going to come and fight me? And all these grown men were like, nah, not me, right? I'm scared. I can't do this. And here David, the teenage boy, came and was like, another factor to put in here is that Goliath, who was the giant, was mocking the Israelites' God too, right? And so David was like, no, I'm not going to have this man mock my God. I can fight him. And I'm sure there was still an element of fear, right? He knows that he might die in this process, but he was courageous and he faced that fear and was like, no, I'm going to do the right thing. And he ended up killing Goliath. So that's one example. Another example we have is of Daniel. Now, probably the most famous story we know about Daniel from the Bible is Daniel in the lion's den. But we assume that he was probably about 80 at that time. So not a great example for like the young people that we were suggesting. So I'm going to talk about a story at the beginning of the book of Daniel. So this is when Daniel and his friends, they were like being trained and taught to help the king. And so part of the process is that they would be fed the best meat, and they were given the best wine and all that sort of stuff. And Daniel didn't feel okay about that. He didn't feel like it was right for him. And so he went to the king's men and said, I really would like to just be eating vegetables and drinking water. And like that, even though it's a little thing, it took courage, because he had no idea if they were going to be okay with it. And it was like he was talking to the king. Here he is, probably a teenager, maybe early 20s, and he's going to approach these king's men that have all sorts of power and authority and be like, I don't want to do what you're telling me to do, right? So it still took courage for him to be willing to stand up for the thing that he thought was right. And so the friends that I was talking about, so it was Daniel and 3 of his friends that chose to have the vegetables and the water. So the other 3 friends were Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. Now, this next story, we don't know exactly how old they are. We don't know how much time has passed since they were like training to be helping the king. But what happened in this situation was that the king had built this huge statue and was telling everyone to bow down and worship the statue. And Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego knew that that was not right. It was because they knew that they needed to be worshiping just the one true God. They couldn't be worshiping this statue. So they refused to bow down. And they knew that if they refused to bow down, that they would end up being thrown into a furnace. And they were still willing to do it. And they said that our God is able to save us. But even if he doesn't, we still know that we're not supposed to be bowing down. And they were ended up being saved too. So there's all sorts of like good results that have come from these stories, but they don't know that in that moment, right? They are still fearful, but they are courageous and they face those fears. They're willing to do the right thing. And of course, we've been talking for several weeks now about Esther and her courage of facing King Xerxes and going and talking to him and on behalf of her people, even though she knew she might be killed. So lots of great examples of courage. And the thing that's in common with all of these people in the Bible that were showing their courage was that they trusted in God and they believed that God was with them, and that was what helped them to face their fear. And I know a verse in the Bible that really helped me when I was younger and I was afraid was Isaiah 41:10. So do not fear, for I am with you. Do not be dismayed, for I am your God. I will strengthen you and help you. I will uphold you with my righteous right hand. And it would just remind me that I didn't need to be afraid because God was there with me and he was taking care of me and he was protecting me. So it's been a while since I've done an object lesson as well. So we're just, throwing it all in the same day here. And so I'm wondering if the kids at home, so what I have here, I have a Ziploc bag, filled with water. There's a little bit of dripping because it got to the outside, but we have that. And I'm wondering if the kids at home, what they might be thinking would happen if I take this sharp pencil and I poke it through the bag. Okay, so maybe would be some concern that the water is going to all of a sudden start to spill out, right? So, I could be worried about that and worried about making a mess. And so then I would be like, oh, I'm just not going to do that because, I'm afraid of what might happen. I might be cautious about that, right? Or I could, I have my nice little tray here. Hopefully people at home can see that. I could make sure that I have my precautions ready and then but I'm going to try it and see what happens. So let's give it a try. And part of me is worried this isn't actually going to work, so we'll see how it works. All right, there we go. So we already had a little bit of dripping happening before, still a little bit of dripping there, but we don't have this water spilling out, as long as I keep the pencil in there. So it's not going to come spilling out, okay? So, but I could have been cautious and been like, no, I'm not going to do that because I'm afraid that I'm going to make a mess. But it's like once we're careful about it, then we're like, okay, I can face my fears. So I want to encourage at home that this is not an invitation to go play in traffic or do anything really dangerous, right? But it's those things that we really should be brave about, that we want to be willing to face our fears about that. If you're not sure what which one is which. Maybe talk to your parents about that. But yeah, so we want to make sure that we're able to face our fears, because if we live life really cautiously, we might miss out on opportunities. And especially, we might miss out on opportunities to be serving God and doing what he wants us to if we're afraid to speak up and to do the right thing.